So today we're going to talk about ransomware with particular focus on WannaCry, as that's been in the news recently. And we're going to have a look at how we can detect ransomware before it starts infecting our network, and the sort of things we can then do to help ourselves against it. So let's start then by having a bit more of a technical understanding of what WannaCry is and how it happened and what we can do to help ourselves about that. So WannaCry basically came about from a 0-day, which was just created by the NSA, specifically the double pulsar and eternal blue exploits, which were dumped online as part of a data dump from the Shadow Broker hacker group back in April. So this basically allowed anyone to create an exploit against these 0 days, but as we'll see later, if your systems were patched, when Microsoft released a patch back in March, it wouldn't have been a 0-day. And so WannaCry exploits a very specific hole in Windows called Message Server Blocks, or SMB for short. And basically what it does, however your machines become infected, and we'll discuss some of those infection tools later, it basically creates an infection in your network that basically starts looking around for other, or starts spreading around looking for other machines that have port 445 open and obviously haven't been patched. What it also does is calls back to a domain to see exactly if it should continue spreading or basically just sit there. So, So who was infected? So here in the UK, we had a lot of NHS systems and universities hit. I don't think they were particularly targeted. I think it was the fact that that was the time of the day it was released, because what we saw was that systems in the US weren't affected, primarily because of the way it was stopped spreading. But as we can see, there were lots of European firms infected: FedEx, Renault, Telefonica, etc. And obviously, as I mentioned already, here in the UK, the NHS and so on. Fortunately, the NHS guys were quick off the mark and managed to contain it as much as they can, but it did affect a lot of systems here in the UK. So, is the threat still out there? Well, the majority of the threats didn't got stopped because a UK researcher discovered a kill switch. So this was a domain that basically, if that domain existed, so basically what happened was WannaCry checked to see if a website existed, and you see the domain name there, it's quite a long one, and if it did exist, it was effectively stop the ransomware encrypting your machine. It didn't actually stop the spread because it was still, but it actually did stop the encryption of your hard drive. Now, this WannaCry actually used a 0-day that, as I mentioned earlier, was patched back in March. So if your systems were fully patched up to date, you wouldn't have been affected by this particular version of ransomware. However, we don't know how difficult it is to maintain an up-to-date patch cycle, especially with systems that are critical and difficult to coordinate reboots, etc., which is basically why we saw such a large spread of the malware and how quickly it actually spread, because a lot of systems weren't patched. So the question is, what can we do about ransomware in general, rather than particularly WannaCry, in order to detect it before it spreads within our network? So what we're going to do, we're going to switch over to a demonstration of a product that basically allows us to detect ransomware pretty much in real time, but not just ransomware, other types of threat as well, user actions or general sort of SQL injections and so on. So we're going to switch over to our demo center. Just bear with me. So this is the tool we use for monitoring our networks. So this is a SIEM, a security incident and event management tool, and there are many of these around. This particular one is Alien Vault, which forms part of our M4 secure managed SIEM service. And this gives us a real-time view of basically what's happening within our network. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch some ransomware that we've got preloaded, and we'll see how quickly it actually detects it. Just 1 second. So then I'm going to launch the Crypto Locker ransomware, and that's set off now. So if I go back here and refresh our alarms, we can see here a ransomware check-in. So basically, this is us simulating that ransomware network traffic as a source. So basically, this is our local IP address, local PC on the network that's been infected, and you can see it going out to this IP address here over HTTP, and it's saying our ransomware is checking in to basically seeing what's checking into the command and control server to see what actions it needs to perform, and we can see more check-ins going here to another IP address, or rather to the same IP address. Again, to get more instructions. So within a few seconds, we've seen that our network monitoring tool, our SIEM, has actually detected a ransomware infection, and our course of action then obviously will be to just go into more detail around this and see exactly. See all the IP addresses it's actually communicating with. We can drill down to further information and to look at the actual packet content itself to see exactly what you can see. It's posting a script to this PHP script here. So this gives information that we can actually do something with, but the first thing we want to do is shut down this machine here. So we can be quickly onto our IT department and say this machine needs to be shut down. So within a matter of minutes, we've contained the outbreak, and then we can start doing some analysis of how it actually happened and what this user actually did to get an infection. Just going to jump back to the slides. So talking about how that user got infected, so there are many ways that a business can get infected, and just to discuss those now. So drive-by downloads. So this is where you potentially visit a legitimate, or your users visit a legitimate website or not, and something on the website exploits a vulnerability within your browser that you haven't patched, and therefore will execute and generate that traffic. So thereby causing the infection. You can have security configuration, such as maybe you've got RDP open to the world, because that was one of the thoughts, the initial attack vectors of WannaCry was it attacking RDP ports, but it's not really been proven whether that was the initial infection or not. So having things open to the world when there shouldn't be is obviously poor security configuration. Users installing freeware or shareware. Most of the freeware or shareware, not to be confused with open source software, will be bundled with some sort of payload that's going to either infect your machine or start your machine running very slowly, or have some sort of command and control instruction built in. Installing malware, viability of software. So if your users are using BitTorrent to download applications and software, then without doubt that's also going to contain some malware. And phishing scams, we're going to talk about in a little bit later. So if your users are targeted to actually click on a link or download a PDF, open the PDF, that's another way that users will become infected. So what can you do about it? Well, obvious things are make sure your operating system is up to date. So if your Microsoft systems were up to date after Microsoft published that patch on March the 14th, you wouldn't have been infected by WannaCry. But also making sure your applications are updated. So a lot of people miss this. Making sure your browser's updated, for instance, Adobe Acrobat's updated, Java was updated. All these are attack vectors within your network that can be easily exploited if you're not careful. But people forget about updating their applications as well. Performing regular security checks. So, subscribe to service. So as part of N4 Secure, we do regular penetration testing or vulnerability assessments. And if we find anything, we then inform the clients to get that fixed. And so performing regular security checks would have also detected things like your RDP is open. So locking things down that shouldn't be open if they get forgotten about. Restricting users, so can you restrict what websites they're browsing? Can you restrict them from downloading stuff from BitTorrent? If you can't restrict them, can you be alerted via the monitoring tools? So I'll just quickly flip back to here. We can see on our monitoring, we've got people using Tor and Dropbox, and we can also detect BitTorrent as well. So we can alert on these things and stop users doing, or not just don't stop them doing things, but basically be alerted when they're doing things just in case they shouldn't be doing things like that. And the last thing is phishing awareness. So can you send out phishing emails to employees to see which particular employee is potentially more susceptible to a phishing attack? So this brings us on to our next demo, which is GoPhish. So this is our tool that we use, again, as part of N4 Secure to provide phishing training to phishing awareness, rather, to companies' employees. So from here, we get a nice dashboard of recent campaigns. It allows us to create new campaigns, target particular users. So we can break our users into groups, so we can schedule or sort of stagger the emails going out. We can create email templates, so based on however we want to do about HTML, put in particular first name or last name that we get from this users and groups. And we can actually create landing pages that look exactly like the company's website or internet page or email login page. So we can create campaigns and basically send these out, and then we get a dashboard, and we can go into results, look at the results of a particular dashboard and see who actually clicked on the emails and what credentials they actually put into the machine, into the website. So we can actually then, if we see a particular user clicking on the link, putting in the username and password, clicking submit, they obviously are a target for more focused phishing training. So this is a tool called GoPhish. It's open source software if you want to use it yourself, or we can manage it for you as part of our N4 Secure service. So that's basically the end of the webinar now. So we're just going to dip into some questions and answers to see if any of our participants have any. Just 1 second. Okay, so we've got a question here about a technical question about actually our SIEM, the Alien Vault SIEM we're using as part of N4 Secure, how do we actually set that up technically? What do we need to implement? Well, from a user's perspective, as being a managed service, we do it all for you, but what we actually need to do from a network configuration perspective is actually span your network traffic. Now, there are various ways of doing that. If you're a Node4 client, there are several ways we can copy your network traffic via one of our taps, or if you're part of the ACI network, we can create a mirror port there, or if it's on site, we can also drop what we call a local sensor on your network. So if we're particularly interested in what your users are doing, we can put a mini PC that's got all the software pre-built into it. Just plug the switch, plug it into your switch, and we start spanning the traffic at that point. So ultimately, one way or another, we need to be able to span your network traffic and get a copy of it going into the SIEM. So another question is around the phishing and the implications from a HR perspective. Now, are we allowed to actually start phishing our employees? Do we need to let them know? Because some people might think they're being targeted. So I guess the question is, as a question for your HR department, always involve HR to make sure they're aware that phishing is going to happen, and maybe make your employees aware at a time in the future this is going to happen, but don't tell them they're not being singled out, they're not being targeted. It's for the whole business awareness, phishing awareness, not individuals. But just talk to your HR department before doing anything like that. So we're just about running out of time now. So thank you very much for joining. Now, if you do have any other questions, then please just email marketing@node4.uk, and they'll pass all the questions on to the security team. And for our future events, please visit the Node4.uk/Substack events for our up-and-coming webinars, which will be happening throughout the course of the year. So I'm just going to sign off now. So thank you very much, everybody, and hopefully we'll listen to a new webinar soon.